Hi readers! So before we start the show, I have a quick ask. Will you pretty please rate and review the show if you like it? I mean, if you don't like it, well, that's your choice. But if you do like it, rating and reviewing helps other people find the show. So if you take a few seconds and hit those 5 stars, that helps. And if you take a minute to write something nice about the show, that will help even more. So thank you in advance. And alrighty, now on to the episode. Hello, I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Parini Shroff to talk about her debut novel, The Bandit Queens. Now, The Bandit Queens is set in present-day India, and we meet a young Indian woman who was rumored to have killed her husband and is now being asked for help by other women in their village so they can get rid of their husbands. Parini also gives us lots of book and bookstore recommendations. She also gives great tips if you're looking to incorporate reading or more reading into your life. Plus, we talk about lots more. So let's get into the episode because I can't wait for you to listen to my chat with author Parini Shroff. A historical fiction novel to add to your reading list is Night Wherever We Go by Tracy Rose Payton. Night Wherever We Go is Payton's debut novel that follows 6 enslaved women living on a plantation in Texas in the decade leading up to the Civil War. Despite the women's differences, we see them come together and take seemingly small risk every day to hold on to their bodily autonomy, their spiritual beliefs, faith, and just holding on to themselves. But their owners come closer and closer to discovering the women's secrets, and the truth can have severe consequences for the women. Night Wherever We Go by Tracy Rose Payton is published by Eco Books, and it's available for purchase now at bookstores everywhere. So add Night Wherever We Go by Tracy Rose Payton to your TBR pile. It's a historical debut novel you won't soon forget. Well, hello readers, and welcome again to another episode of the Reader's Couch podcast. I'm your host, Victoria, and here on the couch with me is a practicing attorney who currently lives in the Bay Area. But she's here with me on the couch to talk about her debut novel, The Bandit Queens. Please welcome to the couch, Parini Shroff. Hey, Parini.
Hi, Victoria. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you here. Can't wait to talk about The Bandit Queens. And on that note, I mean, it's your debut novel. It's out there. It's available in the world. How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. It's always a scary thing. The writing process is so intimate, and even the editing process is intimate with your circle kind of expanding. But to have it out in the world, there's an excitement, but there's also a vulnerability because it doesn't feel mine anymore. And that's a great thing because I wrote it to share, and I wrote it so people would enjoy it.
Absolutely, and sounds completely normal to me, but I love the fact that more readers can get in on the process. We can read it, learn something new, hopefully have fun, have a few laughs, because that's how I felt reading The Bandit Queens.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It's a dark comedy, and I hope that while not, I don't want to minimize the issues that are the themes for the book, such as the patriarchy and domestic violence and casteism, as this book is set in India. But I do hope that the dark humor serves to levitate the narrative, and hopefully there are pockets of joy in the novel.
Absolutely, absolutely. I thought you did a great job balancing the two. And with that said, tell us about your debut. Tell us about The Bandit Queens. What can readers expect when they pick up your book?
So it is a novel that follows mainly Geeta. She is an artisan living in a village in modern day India. Everybody in this village thinks she killed her husband, but she didn't. He just disappeared. And Geeta's living a quiet, ostracized life when the other wives of the village demand her help so that they too can become self made widows to get rid of their abusive spouses. And Geeta and the women must make choices to protect each other and themselves.
Absolutely. So Geeta, I found quite interesting. But yes, you're right. She is isolated. She has a lifelong friend who, again, she becomes more isolated because they had a big fight. Her friend's name is Saloni, and she's a part of this microloan group that funds Geeta's business. So, one, I want you to share with listeners more about Geeta. You know who she is as an individual. Yes, her husband, who people think she murdered, but actually just disappeared. She's also running a business. She's very isolated, but however, this isolation and this reputation allows her to kind of scare the local children into doing what she wants, which I found funny in some bits. But it wasn't respect she had. It was more of fear. I felt reading the book that folks feared Geeta more than anything else. So tell us about Geeta, who she is as a person, but then also about her friend who she falls out with, Saloni.
Yes, well, Geeta starts off in the novel from a very lonely, isolated position, and she kind of tricks herself into thinking she prefers it that way. Children are afraid of her, but that's fine because she doesn't like children, and people don't want to be her friend, but that's fine because she doesn't need people. And the course of the novel is really Geeta. While her assistance is sought to dispose of husbands, it's also about Geeta opening herself up to second chances, be it a second chance with Saloni, the childhood friend who they no longer speak, like reuniting those two, and also second chances with romance. And there's a dog that Geeta adopts, a street dog that Geeta adopts, and that dog serves kind of as a metaphor for Geeta opening herself up and allowing her world to be bigger. And you touched upon the microloan group, and thank you for that because this novel started as a short story 10 years ago when I was visiting India and I sat in on a microloan group in a village in Gujarat. And when I observed this loan meeting, I knew this was something special. I knew it was unique. So Geeta was born out of this idea of, oh, what would happen in a microloan group if someone's husband was stealing her loan money? What would the other women in that group band together and do? So ultimately, I thought originally I was writing about money, but as the novel progressed, I realized that I was really writing about female friendships. And I'm happy I realized that because that's where a lot of the heart and the humor come from. Not so much the money, but these women coming together to take down the patriarchy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so on the note of the microloan group, because this is kind of where all the drama stems from, because a member from this same group, Farah, actually approaches Geeta to help her remove her husband. And Geeta's a bit reluctant about it, but eventually she agrees. Of course, things kind of go wrong from there. And I really want readers to kind of read to see what happens because this murder does not go smoothly, needless to say. But I'm very interested in Farah, the character in the book as well. So tell us about Farah. And I remember you mentioning about the dog because she does adopt a dog. It was interesting to kind of hear you mention that was a metaphor because she also goes on to name the dog Bandit. So it was Kareem's dog, I think, if my memory serves me right. So yes, tell us about Farah, the first woman who reaches out to Geeta for help. Kareem, who things, kind of get messy when Geeta connects with him. He's also a widower in this story. And of course, the dog, because I loved reading about the dog as well.
So Farah is a complicated character. I hear a lot of, I don't like Farah, and that's fair. She does approach Geeta to murder her husband, and she does have questionable morality. But Farah starts off in a desperate position. Her money is being stolen by her husband to fund his alcoholism, and she's trying to survive and take care of her children. And so she's put in a desperate situation and responds in kind. Her and Geeta have a bit of a frenemy situation. We're not I won't ruin anything, but there are dueling motives, dueling agendas, and I think that's where the complexity of their female friendship and its growth, it does, they don't have the history that Geeta and Saloni do, but there is tension there, but also redemption. And it's like many female friendships, it's complicated. um, Kareem is a single father and a widower, and he runs a bootleg alcohol business to support his family. And with his character, there's also a sliding morality scale because technically this business is illegal, but everybody's participating, and Kareem is just trying to do right by his kids ever since his wife died. And when Geeta and Kareem reunite, they start off from a rocky place. Geeta does not approve of his business initially, but as she gets to know Kareem, she changes her mind. And that's another example of second chances, too. People are not always what they seem. Geeta's not a murderess. Kareem is not a criminal. Farah is not a blackmailer. There are shades to all these characters, which I hope highlights their complexity and their likability.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you mentioned that folks were kind of saying, well, I don't like Farah so much, and I understand as well. But who is the character in the novel that you enjoyed writing the most?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm so happy to give a resounding Saloni. I love Saloni. I love her because I'm not her. And so I think it's really easy to admire these qualities that she has that I wish I possessed. She is smart and feisty, and she's a total alpha. Like, she can command a crowd of men and women alike. And she gets a lot of the witty one-liners that you mentioned earlier on. And she was an absolute joy to write.
Yay, I love hearing that. Now, you mentioned earlier as well that you were on a trip, you sat in on a microloan meeting, and it kind of got the gears in your brain turning as you were writing, because this started as a short story that you mentioned. But what really inspired you? What made you decide to write The Bandit Queens, expand on, what was a short story in the beginning, to kind of make it into a full blown novel? So, what was your inspiration?
I returned to this short story in 2020 during quarantine, and I unfortunately my earlier manuscript did not sell, and I was at a loss. I knew I needed to continue writing. I knew I wanted to continue writing, but I wasn't sure what to work on. And I reread the short story that I had put away in my desk, and as I was reading it, I just started writing all these notes of a larger world unfolding. I kept asking myself questions like, what does this character, originally a minor character, what does this character look like? Or describe this. And I just had all of these, just a pad full of notes, and the world unfolded and grew bigger. And then plot points started happening, such as, murder and blackmail and all these interesting things. And from there, honestly, this is the quickest manuscript I've ever written. It feels like it fell out of me. It was a very exciting and special process for me. The writing had never flowed like that before.
That's amazing. I love hearing it. But on that token, on the flip side, what would you say is the most difficult part of your creative process?
Starting. I think for me, writing is a lot like exercise. Starting is the hardest part. I enjoy it in the middle, and then I'm really happy I did it after it's done. So every day, even though I loved returning to this world of these sassy women, starting and sitting myself down as opposed to all the million things I could do to distract myself, chores I could do, just committing to sitting down. And I often have to trick myself. I say, just sit down for 10 minutes and read what you wrote yesterday. Just edit that. And before you know it, those 10 minutes have turned into a few hours, and I have increased my word count or increased my page count. And it's been a good work day.
Okay, so now that The Bandit Queens, it's here, folks can go online, walk into a bookstore and pick up a copy. The goal of publishing has been realized, but if you could look back and tell your younger writing self anything, what would you tell her?
Be patient. You're going to keep writing. It's what you love to do, and it's a big part of your identity. You're going to keep writing no matter what, but the business side of it, the selling to a publishing house, the selling in bookstores, that will happen in its own time. And just be patient with yourself and the process.
Absolutely. I think that can be applicable to so many different things. So,
Uh,
yeah, be patient for sure. And the last thing I want to know about your writing life is I want to know, are you working on any other projects, Parini? Anything in our future? What can you tell us?
I am working on another novel right now. I don't outline, and so I'm very curious as to where it will take me. So I'm starting that, and again, I'm trying to be patient with myself because the process is definitely different when you have a book out in the world. So I'm trying to juggle both, if that makes sense, and carve out time for the new project while still promoting and being in touch with the characters from the Bandit Queens.
Right. Absolutely. No, that makes sense for sure. Okay, now I'm really excited to get into your reading life because even though we're here to talk about the Bandit Queens, we just love books. We love adding books to our TBR. So tell me about the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
Oh, I recently read, it was towards the end of last year, I read a novel called Animal by Lisa Tadeo, and
Mhm.
it's not for the faint of heart. It's explosive, intense writing, but that book stayed with me for days. So I absolutely recommend that. Another novel I loved recently is an older one. It's called We Are All Completely Besides Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler. That book broke my heart in the best way. I also loved Black Cake, When We Were Sisters, The Mars Room, and Sea of Tranquility was just a delicious novel.
Absolutely love it. So, a big question I have for readers and authors, and just anyone in general who just reads and loves books. I want to know, do you reread books? And if you do, what was your last reread?
You know, I'm sure that other people feel this. I have reading anxiety where I'm just like, there's so many amazing books, and I already won't be able to get to all of them. So I feel guilty about rereading, even though there's pleasure in returning to a world that you know you loved. So I don't often reread, but two books that I have reread last year were Writers and Lovers by Lily King and The Girl's Guide to Hunting and Fishing by Melissa Banks.
Okay, okay, awesome. And that is very fair. You're right. There's so many books and so little time. So it's definitely a bookworm problem for sure. Now, going back to your childhood self, Parini, what would you say was your favorite childhood book? Because also, the other thing about children is they will reread those books. Something about childhood that just, breaks barriers. But let me know, what was your childhood favorite?
I loved the first book of the Boxcar Children's series. I think I checked that book out from the library so many times. They were just ready to give it to me. I loved that book. And I also read a lot of the Sweet Valley series. I read Sweet Valley
Mhm.
High, I read Sweet Valley University. I just consumed those. And I also loved VC Andrews. I read a lot of VC Andrews in my
Okay.
adolescence.
Awesome, awesome. Sounds good. What would you say is your go-to genre though? Like what genre do you gravitate to the most?
I read a lot of literary fiction.
Okay.
I would say
Okay.
almost exclusively, yeah.
Right, right. No, that's fair. Have you read any classics lately? I mean, were there any classics that maybe you're reading for the first time?
I've actually been revisiting the Iliad.
Wow.
I wouldn't say it's not a, front to back experience. It's more I will open it to random pages and read when I'm stuck in my own work. And I'm not sure why, but it unblock something. And it might not even, you might look at what I read and the finished product of what I write, and you might not be able to find the connection there, but it does something to my brain. So I keep doing it.
I love that. No, I actually love hearing that just because that's something I do myself. I have a set of books that I revisit. I don't reread them in their entirety. Now, there's some books I have reread numerous times. However, I revisit passages because sometimes I'll flag a section or sometimes I'll just crack a book open and just read from there. But I'm only able to do that with those books that I've read before. And that is a complete reset of the mind. It kind of calms me down. Sometimes it's before a meeting, sometimes it's when I have creative blocks. So, yeah, I actually feel seen right now hearing that.
I love it. I feel like what you just shared is how I feel like there's a safety to returning to a world, and be it a passage you loved or a scene or a dialogue exchange. I think it's great to revisit those, even if you might not have the time to fully finish rereading a book from front to back.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, so I also want to know what books you're looking forward to reading in the year ahead. So maybe what books are on your nightstand or on your TBR? What books are you planning to either buy, check out, or read? What are you looking forward to?
Oh, I mean, this year marked so many great releases. So I'm looking forward to, I have some questions for you. Really good, actually. Night Wherever We Go, Age of Vice, Sam is another one. And also American Mermaid. I'm really curious about American Mermaid.
Oh, awesome. Sounds good. So, really curious because I just kind of gather, you have a lot going on in your personal life, plus your reading, plus your writing. What advice would you give to someone who wants to incorporate reading or maybe wants to incorporate more reading into their lives? Like, what tips have worked for you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I have to trick myself. So I would recommend readers to set small, attainable goals so that they can feel accomplished and productive and enjoy their reading time instead of maybe feeling like, oh, they set a goal and didn't meet it. And then they get discouraged. So I would set small, either chapter goals or page count goals or even timed goals, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because you might find that you exceed that because you're enjoying yourself in whatever you're reading. But if not, if that's all you do, then you have set and attained a goal, and that is a nice rush, right? A dopamine rush.
Right, right. Absolutely. And I think that's pretty smart indeed, because I too have to trick myself. Because when you were saying earlier about hating to work out in the beginning and exercising and moving your body in the beginning, but in the middle, you're like, okay. And then in the end, you're glad that you did it. That is my psychology every single time I'm trying to move my body.
Yes, yes. I think it's common. We're just human, we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely. That we are. Okay, so we also love bookstores here on the podcast and just this community in general. We ask all our guests on the show, so I would love to know some of your favorite local indie bookstores.
I love I frequent Books Inc. because it is walking distance from me. So I just go down. Technically, we're on the same street. I just go down Castro, and there I am. So I frequent there. But what I love is when I travel and I get to explore bookstores that I might never see again. There's something really exciting about that. And I was recently in Portland, and I went to the very famous Powell bookstores, and it was so big, and it was overwhelming in the best way. And I was, of course, thrilled to see it very crowded, and people just like their to be read piles, just, you can't even see their faces. They're just walking around with this huge stack of books. It's like such a dream.
That is amazing. Yes, readers or TBRs are known to explode, and do not let us loose in a bookstore or library because we will go crazy. For sure. Okay, so Parini, I want to get back to the Bandit Queens really quick. I want to wrap things up for our listeners. If I were to make an elevator pitch, some of the words that came to my mind, these are the words I wrote down in my reading journal. Dark comedy, second chances, witty women, but also, there were some heavier topics of misogyny and abuse and just, some of the misery that these women experience, but also again there was joy. There's female friendship, support, and just kind of seeing the village ultimately coming together. So those are just some of my words, my takeaways, my feelings about the Bandit Queens. But when the reader turns the last page for you, I know you've done your job, you've written the book, it's out of your hands. But what are maybe some of the reactions you're hoping for, or just maybe some thoughts you're hoping readers might have after reading The Bandit Queens?
I'd love for a reader to feel satisfied because that means I upheld my end of the bargain of the writing. And I'd also love readers to feel a bit outraged at some of these issues that are not just unique to India, but ubiquitous, like the patriarchy and misogyny and domestic violence. And discrimination. There's casteism in the novel, but we are all very familiar with prejudice. So I would like there to be satisfaction, but I'd also like there to be outrage and maybe a curiosity to read these more marginalized voices of Dalit characters and female characters.
Absolutely. We can't get enough of stories from women, by women, reading more marginalized voices and just, diversifying our reading choices. And I think the Bandit Queens, again, heavy but fun, joyful, but, there's something to take away for sure. And I really enjoyed diving into the world of these women. So Parini, thank you so much, one, for writing this book, but also coming on the Reader's Couch to discuss it with me.
Oh, this was absolutely delightful. Thank you again for having me. I'm very honored.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.